Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to this live conversation. So happy to have you guys here with us. All right, if you're a returning viewer, listener, subscriber, welcome back, welcome back. If you're new to this channel, welcome, welcome. Voices in Education is a safe space where we share and learn from each other. We do that in a respectful way to ensure that we're maintaining our safe community, our safe space, so we do not bash anyone, we do not belittle anyone. So we keep it real and respectful. And we understand too that, we share different views or perspectives, and that's totally okay. There is so much richness in diversity that gives us the opportunity to learn from each other. Again, we just want you to keep it respectful so that we can maintain our safe community. So we're here to update the community about, the DPP's case, and just to let you know that the government, so the Andrew Holness led administration, they won this appeal. And I'm going to give you some context in as it relates to how we got to this point, and also just to give you an update of what happened today based on what is available, the information that is available. But first, I just want to say hello, Avi. How are you doing?
I am good. My background might be a little bit noisy, but I'm here trying to get abreast of what is happening as it relates to this case, involving the DPP.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. And guys, if you have been following this platform, we have been there in terms of just providing you the updates. And so we're going to do that too. And we're going to also open the line just to get, to hear your voice. But I believe I just want to bring you, up to date in the context of what has happened and what is here now, and then we can take some calls and perhaps drop the Zoom link as well, so you can come back, you can share, join us on Zoom and share as well. All right, so if you weren't following this case, so back in April, all right, the Constitutional Court, they ruled that the second extension given to the DPP, so Paula Llewellyn, was null and void and of no legal effect. So let me just try to give you some context, prior to this Constitutional Court's ruling. So back in 2020, I believe, all right, and I stand corrected here, the DPP reached the age of 60, I believe, back in 2020. And so at that time, the retirement age for the DPP was 60 years, all right? So as a result, the DPP at the time requested an extension, all right? And that extension, I guess, to remain in office. And that extension was granted. I believe it was granted for about 3 years. All right. And I'm saying that because when the DPP got to age 63, all right, the government amended the legislation regarding the retirement age for the DPP and the Auditor General as well, from 60 to 65 years. All right. So we're providing that context. So, you kind of get to where we're at now. So, all right. So that was the next thing that was done. The legislation was amended, all right, in the context of the retirement age for the DPP and the Auditor General from 60 to 65. All right, so at that time, the PNP, they were pretty much sharing that this amendment was unconstitutional. All right, so it goes against the Constitution. So the PNP, they took the matter to court. So Peter Bunting and Philip Paulwell, they went on behalf of the opposition. All right, so they took this matter to court. All right, so what happened is that in April, as I shared earlier, the Constitutional Court ruled that the amendment in the context of the retirement age from 60 to 65 was valid, right? So that's what my understanding of that ruling was. However, the Constitutional Court, in its ruling then, they ruled that the second extension that was given to the DPP was null and void and of no legal effect. So, while I was looking at that, I'm like, okay, how is it then that you can rule that it is valid for the age to be moved from 60 to 65, but then the second extension is invalid? All right, so that was an issue there. So the government, which is this administration, Andrew Holness's administration, initially said, so I guess after that ruling, that the DPP would remain, all right, in office and they would seek clarification. At that time, the opposition, they strongly maintained, that the DPP must leave the office. And if you remember too, even, lawyers and I believe the legal counsel, a lot of persons were sharing and pretty much saying, the court ruling is clear, and obviously it wasn't. All right, so I'll just leave it there. And then what happened next was that I believe it was a weekend. So this ruling happened a Friday in April. And then on the Sunday, we got an update from the Attorney General's chamber that, the DPP, Paula Llewellyn, was pretty much walking away from the office. So she was going to leave based on the ambiguity and uncertainty of the court's ruling. So that's the Constitutional Court's ruling. And as a result, she pretty much shared that she was unable to carry out, the duties of the office at that time. So if we all recall, at that point, the Public Services Commission, I believe their tenure had expired, they weren't there. So I guess there was some back and forth in terms of getting them back into commission. And I remember again, the opposition, they were on this too. And so on Monday, an acting DPP, all right, was selected, or I guess appointed, and that was Claudette Thompson. All right, so just to give you that backdrop if you're not familiar with the case, all right? And so again, the government, they brought this matter, so they filed an appeal in the Court of Appeal, and based on what happened in that context, and I'm going to try my best here to just share with you this update. All right, and so in the context of that update, and this is from Nationwide, so I'm just going to read this for you. Paula Llewellyn will resume duties as the country's chief prosecutor after the government scored a major legal victory in the Court of Appeal Friday morning. So that ruling back in April came a Friday, and we're a Friday again here. So the unanimous panel overturned a constitutional court ruling striking down the second extension of Llewellyn's tenure in office. The Holness administration had come under political fire from the opposition People's National Party, which accused the government of seeking to extend Llewellyn's tenure for an improper purpose. On Friday, the Court of Appeal rejected that argument among several others from the opposition. And so I'm just going to share, pretty much, what happened or based on this report, because I haven't seen. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if it's published yet or available. So it was a unanimous decision from Justices Jennifer Straw, Vivian Harris, and Kisak Leng. They say Paula Llewellyn is entitled to benefit from the extension found to have been validly enacted by the Parliament. So I guess here the court is saying, Parliament, it is their right to make laws, to amend laws, and so they find no problems with that. In providing a summary of the reasons for the court's judgment, Justice Straw concluded the Constitutional Court was correct to reject the argument advanced by the People's National Party PNP that the amendment was enacted for an improper purpose. All right, so again, this is based on a report from Nationwide. The appellate judges also agreed with the lower court that Section 2, subsection 1 of the amendment did not circumvent the process laid down in the Constitution for the term of the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. The judges then turned to the question of whether the amendment could lawfully be applied to Paula Llewellyn. Here, they found the lower court made an error. So I'm going to just try and play this little clip that is available here, and I'll just come back in the chat in a little bit.
We find as such that the full court erred in limiting the applicability of the section in this regard. We conclude, therefore, that Section 2.1 of the Amending Act is applicable to the incumbent DPP.
All right, so that's from a clip there from the court. The appeal court judges then turned to whether Section 2, subsection 2, was inconsistent with the supremacy clause of the Constitution. Here again, they concluded the lower court judges were in error. All right, Justice Straw described the test applied by the lower court judges as problematic and a misunderstanding of the law. Let's go to this clip.
In determining the validity of Section 2.2, the full court used the following test. Open quotations, whether the amending act is in substance different from that which was originally contemplated by the drafters of Section 96.1, or whether the amending act alters what Section 96.1 had originally said in the Constitution. Close quotation. Both questions were answered in the affirmative. We conclude that that test, as formulated, was problematic and appeared to be a misunderstanding of the law expounded by Lord Diplock in Hinds and the Queen.
All right, and so the appeal court judges say the lower court should have determined whether Parliament conformed to the requirements of the Constitution and whether the Parliament had the power to pass the amendment in the manner that it did. Justice Straw says the lower court judges again fell in error in their interpretation of the effect of Section 2, subsection 2 of the amendment passed by the Holness administration. So let's just go to this recording.
Upon the promulgation of the Amending Act, the incumbent DPP automatically benefited from the increased retirement age by virtue of Section 2.1. Section 2.2 did not add to that benefit and is therefore not unconstitutional or inconsistent with 2.1. The full court erred in declaring that Section 2.2 of the Amending Act was an invalid constitutional amendment and is to be severed from the Amending Act and struck down as being unconstitutional, null void, and of no legal effect.
All right. The appeal court also rejected the arguments from the PNP urging it to read down sections of the amendment from applying to Paula Llewellyn. They also rejected the lower court's conclusion that there is need for agreement between the Prime Minister and the opposition leader to extend the DPP's tenure in office. So remember back, there was this conversation that there cannot be any extension of the DPP's tenure unless the opposition is in agreement. And the court here is clarifying that, consultation does not mean agreement. So they concluded that consultation does not mean agreement. So they can consult and say, okay, for example, we have Paula Llewellyn in mind, we're going to extend, and if the opposition does not agree, what the court is saying, that has nothing to do with whoever, I guess, the government of the day, wants to select or extend in this particular case based on this context. So let us be specific because context matters. All right. And so here, the Court of Appeal therefore upheld the Holness's administration appeal and rejected the PNP's counter appeal. And, the government was represented by King's Counsel Alan Wood, Ransford Braham, and attorneys Nico Pagan and Samoy Campbell. The PNP was represented by King's Counsel Michael Hilton and attorney Kevin Powell. All right, so it is understood once the registrar of the Court of Appeal issues the certificate of the ruling to the Public Service Commission, the acting appointment of Claudette Thompson, so that's the acting DPP, is expected to be revoked. Paula Llewellyn would then lawfully be permitted to resume her duties. Her term comes to an end in September 2025. All right, so meanwhile, attorney for Paula Llewellyn, King's Counsel Douglas Lays, says their legal team was also confident they would prevail in this matter. Let's go to that record.
I think we were pretty confident going in because, as I said, the legal arguments were tested and retested. A lot of research, background from the whole operations of the pension systems in the civil service and what Parliament was trying to achieve, looking at the pension legislation, looking at the constitutional amendment and how it would have impacted my client's ability to get a pension.
All right, and also there's a recording from the government's legal team, Nico Pagan. Let's go to that one.
The decision of the Court of Appeal is a welcome victory for the government. It demonstrates that the government at all times acted lawfully when it amended the Constitution to allow for the increase in the retirement age for the two key senior public officers, being the DPP and the Auditor General. It also demonstrated that the government at all times acted for a proper purpose.
All right, so I am not seeing any updates from King's Counsel Michael Hilton in the context of the PNP. I am not seeing anything just yet, but if you have any information, please let us know in terms of an update. All right, so that's what I have so far. So if you're here, thank you so much for being here and for your patience, but I figured that I needed to share, the context in terms of how we got to this point and what is happening now. So I am just going to put the information in the chat. So the Zoom link, all right, I'm going to put that in the chat if you'd like to join us and share, as well as a WhatsApp number that you can call. And again, we keep it very real and respectful. So if you're going to call to disrespect anyone or defame anybody, please don't. So whether it's Mr. Golding or Mr. Holness or Miss Paula Llewellyn, whoever, All right, we show that respect. Even if you don't agree with their perspectives and you want to share that, you can share that in a respectful way. Okay? So we really appreciate you being here with us. And I am just trying to put that information in the chat for you. Would love to hear from you. Just some short, calls, or if you join us on the Zoom, just some quick points that you'd like us to share. I don't have a lot of time this evening, unfortunately, but I really want to hear your voice. It's not just my voice, it's voices in education, and I definitely want to hear from you. I remember too that when this point came up, and I don't know if Ovi, if you remember, but they started to do a little history in terms of the government's track record and in terms of cases that they have lost and over the time versus what they've been successful in. So I suspect here, because a lot of this too was very political in terms of, I remember when I was talking about that, one of the things we were looking at was the political climate. And Ovi, you were on it, and I was saying, well, I think the government they should appeal because in terms of the political climate, and we're still expecting that election, the general elections. And so for that, that was something good to do. But to see that, I guess everybody's saying, if you're going to look at it from a political sense, they have scored a political point, and I guess the opposition, they lost the point there because they were very strong. They pushed this all the way. And, so I guess I don't know if the opposition, if they're going to move further in terms of trying to go to the Privy Council, in terms of seeking that leave to appeal. I don't know, but I suspect perhaps they would accept this decision as the final, but I don't know. But we'll keep you posted in the context of these updates. But I would love to hear from you. I am not seeing any comments in the chat, but Ovi, I am going to come over to you just to hear your views given this update.
Yeah, interesting updates in this one, and it's good that the laws could be inspected and analyzed again. Let me put again there, and proper I guess the best interpretation of the laws came to the fore after being scrutinized by persons who are quite capable of doing that. So, the government saw where they had a case, and they decided that they wanted to, they wanted to pursue this one, and they have won. And I think, it's just a case where the opposition, probably just need to leave this, alone, and try to move forward, trying to find ways in which they can impact the country in terms of voters, and find other ways and means to do that. And I'll just let this one go. As you rightly said, they have lost a political point from this one, and it gives the notion too that they might be trying to clutch at straws just to to get political mileage. So, that's another thing that, could be the case. But, we want the opposition to be strong and, go against things that they think is not right. And also, give us good representation there. But, swinging over to the other side, the government saw that they, in their own eyes, that they didn't do anything wrong, and they brought it to the courts, and the courts sided with them based on the information present. So, it's good to see that there's some sort of finality coming to this case, or should I just say ruling coming to this case. So, let's see how things progress going forward. But it's good to get an update from this case. So thank you so much for the information you presented.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much too for sharing your views. And if you're here and listening to us, we would love to hear from you too. So don't be afraid to comment in the chat or give us a call. The WhatsApp number is in the chat there, or you can just join us on that link in the chat as well. Would love to hear your voice. All right, it's not just my voice, it's voices. So we want to hear from you. And please remember to hit the like button, the share button, and the subscription button as we continue to grow stronger together. So while we are waiting to see if we get any comments or, different or views from persons here tuned in, I just want to go to the information minister. All right, Dana Dixon, all right, shared here, and I'm just going to try to get that recording going for you. So let me just get that one.
Modern. The government of Prime Minister Andrew Holness welcomes the ruling of the appeal court, which has essentially affirmed that the administration's decision to pass legislation which extends the retirement ages of the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Auditor General as lawful. We were always confident that our actions were not only lawful, but good policy and in line with what obtains in several modern jurisdictions. It is unfortunate that this was politicized to a large extent. We're pleased, though, with the work of the legal team, which included King's Counsel Alan Wood and Senator Ransford Graham, along with Nico Pagan and Catherine Williams. And again, we welcome today's ruling. The government
All right, so that's an update there from the information minister. She's also the minister for education, but I guess she was speaking in the capacity of the minister of information. So let me just quickly check in the chat here to see if I'm missing any updates. Not seeing any updates here. Oh, hold on. Let me see here. And Denver, welcome. Not Dana. All right, Denver, perhaps you need to share a little bit more there, but welcome to the chat. All right, so just that in the context of updates, I'm just going to check because we want to be balanced here, just to see if there is anything from the opposition. Let me just check here just to see, and I suspect that they're perhaps going to wait a little bit if they haven't shared anything, just to get that and to pretty much, digest that and to see what their next move is going to be. And I would want them to come back to us, the public, to share, something, because again, they were pushing this, they pushed this one. And so we want to hear from you. And, that is the thing, in life, and I'm not just speaking about politics because it's Jamaica first. When we think about life, we don't always win, but we need to take some lessons from that. And I would be very pleased to have Mr. Golden come and say, okay, we were of the view that X, the court ruled Y, this is how we're going to move forward. And, just for us to get an understanding, because we don't want to have this win-lose battle, right? We want the opposition to be working for us too. And it's not just the opposition because you're a PNP or we want the opposition to be working for Jamaicans. Oftentimes we talk about checks and balances, which is really political terms because, and very political in that sense, but we really want the opposition to work for us as a nation, as a people. And so we want them to do the work, right? In that context. And so while the government say they're working, we want the opposition to ensure that the government is working for us, right? And so when we want to look at it as a partnership, as a collaborative effort in terms of moving forward, in terms of moving the nation forward, in terms of providing, better support, resources for us as a nation, right? So that we can thrive, we can raise our families, and in a good way. And so that is definitely important in the context of, what we want to see for Jamaica land we love. Let me just quickly check back here in the chat. And Denver, Denver, I'm not too sure what your comment is about at this point. All right, so I am just checking. Let me just check to see. I'm not sure if the Prime Minister shared anything in particular regarding this matter. Perhaps later on. I am not seeing, so I guess that's what we got from the information minister there. So I'm just doing a quick little check here. Just to make sure, because we like to keep it balanced, and that is definitely important. So I am just running a quick check here. Not seeing any comments. So I'm checking. Okay, so there's an update from the PNP, and that is why I like to check. So, and I don't just rely on traditional media because I want to be balanced. So I haven't heard this before, so it's the first time I'm going to hear it. So it's a statement from Senator Donna Scott Motley on the ruling on the DPP. So we're going to listen to this one together. All right, so let me just get this one going for you.
Challenge that. The following is a release from the People's National Party Media Unit. Today, the Court of Appeal overturned the unanimous decision of the Supreme Court by allowing the government's appeal in respect of our challenge to the constitutional amendment, providing a second extension of the tenure in office of the DPP. While we, of course, respect the Court of Appeal's decision, we take this opportunity to reiterate two of the fundamental concerns that led us to challenge that legislation in court. The government's enactment of constitutional legislation without any consultation with the opposition on a matter concerning a particularly sensitive office, coupled with the unprecedented haste to pass it through Parliament without proper review or any prepared debate, amounted to a pernicious abuse of power inimical to good governance in a constitutional democracy. The government's approach was all the more egregious given the constitutional reform process that was then underway, and that was completely sidestepped by this rushed constitutional change. We await receiving the written reasons for the decision of the Court of Appeal, and we will make a determination as to the next steps once we have had an opportunity to review those reasons. As the opposition, we remain steadfast in our commitment to democratic principles of government And we will continue to defend the Constitution and the people of Jamaica whenever we feel they are in jeopardy from an abusive use of political. Visit our website at pnp.org.
All right, so this is a very strong statement coming from the PNP. And so they are still, I guess they say they're going to wait for the written part of the court's ruling just to get a sense of what is happening. But still, they're out very strong in terms of saying abusive process. And again, based on what I shared from Nationwide, the court is saying consultation does not mean agreement. And one of the questions was, the way in which the amendment was passed, if that was pretty much constitutional, if that goes in terms of how. And I guess the court did not find anything wrong with that based on what I read earlier. But I really appreciate the PNP sharing something, because I needed to hear from them. Again, they're still strong. And so as we want to see too is that written part, to get a better sense or a better understanding of, the court ruling in that context. So, Ovi, I'm going to come over to you again just to see, what your views are in the context of the PNP's, statement or media release from Donna Scott Motley on the ruling of the DPP.
Oh yes, thanks for coming back over on this side. So, it's obvious that the opposition is not happy with the ruling. However, as you rightly said, they came out and made a statement, and that's really important, in this day and age. So, kudos to them in that regard. And they seem to what they're going to be doing based on my interpretation of how that message was delivered, it sounds like they might continue to push forward with this case. However, they're going to make sure that they go through and scrutinize the document that will be sent to them by the courts to ensure that whatever they're going to push forward with is meaningful. And it's good to know that they are going to review the document and see where they stand, because you don't want to go out there swinging and you don't have the facts. So they are pretty much steadfast on going forward with this, I would say, just trying to make sure that all the steps that they push forward with are the right steps. So it's good to see them coming back and responding in short order after the release of this ruling.
Yeah, for sure. And don't go just yet, because you mentioned that they are pushing, and I kind of get that sense, but I want to bring this to everyone who is listening and just to your attention to kind of get this. So I guess depending, and that's the important part, the explanation, the ruling, the written part. And so depending on what they see there, and if you suspect, for example, that they're going to seek leave to go to the the Privy Council, that now becomes another case, because it is telling me that they don't trust the system here, and they are strongly opposing the Privy Council in that context, right? And so I am wondering how this would look from their perspective if they're now going to go to the Privy Council, or if they're going to seek, that relief to go to the Privy Council. Are you still here, Ovi?
Yes, I am still here. Yeah, so yeah, they're gonna do some revision, I suspect, of the explanation and see what they can go forward with. That's my opinion. But as I said, it's just the way how Miss Motley came across to me was that they are still, disgruntled, not happy with the ruling, and
They won't be
they
happy with the ruling because they
and
push so hard. So now that's why I was wondering if they're going to seek leave to go to the perhaps not, but because it's just spicy, hot off the press, something has to come. And they're saying that they respect the court's decision, which is good because we have to respect the court of the land. And I suspect that they're going to read. I don't know if there's going to be much to move forward with, but something that she kind of emphasized was that the Court of Appeal pretty much overturned the Supreme Court ruling. That's the constitutional court. And so the final court in this would be to go to the Privy Council if it is that they're going to continue with this matter. But I am not too sure what that will look like for the PNP. Again, it's obvious that it's a political climate wherein the elections are upon us. They're coming at they must come at some point. And so the PNP would want to put themselves in a position where perhaps they can use this. They won't want this to be used against them in campaigns. You know how campaigns are. They're going to come back, the JLP is going to use this and push out at you, so they will have to now go back to that drawing board, and I guess when that written part is available, to see if they're going to try to challenge this or if there's any possibility. I don't know. I don't even know if they can seek leave to go to the Privy Council. I'm just talking based on the system that we have in place, guys. So yeah, I don't know what their next step will be, but we'll see. I know that the Privy Council is the final court of appeal, right? But we'll see if they'll seek leave to go there, or if that is possible, whatever. I don't know, but I guess they can. But should it be a case where they accept this ruling or, move on, try to focus on the elections and try to look at some of the wins that the PNP that they have in terms of the political mileage that they have gained? Oh, Denver, you're sharing, okay, that it was good that Paula got her extension to 65. After all, she's a public servant, and since the politicians can serve until thy kingdom come, I applaud the court to help her prevail. And this is coming from a man who has no horses from either parties. All right. All right. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Denver. And I guess that's an important point there, as you shared in the context of the politicians serving until thy kingdom come, thy will be done. All right. And so in that context, they're saying you're not seeing anything wrong with having, this extension to 65 because we have politicians going up in their 80s and they're still serving. So I get that point, and that's a good point. So welcome, guys. I see that we're over 30 persons. So can you just close the chat and hit the thumbs up button? And consider hitting the subscription button too if you're new to this space. So if you're just joining, we shared about, the DPP's ruling update and pretty much how we got to this point. So I'm just going to give a quick recap, all right, before we go, just to let you know what's the situation. All right, so back in April, all right, so of this year, so
so
back in
just
April,
before your recap, sorry
sure.
to go in now, but it was just it crossed my mind while you were going through a bit of information, and I want to put this one to you in terms of the political climate, the possibility of an election coming, and for the PNP to get this back into the court so it cannot be used in terms of campaigning. would that be probably a political? Do you think that that could be a political strategy that is employed rather than conceding just to get it back? If you can find sift through, find something to just get it into that
Oh,
state where
absolutely. If you
it
remember
cannot
when
be.
we had this one of these conversations earlier, I guess back in April, I said to you when you were saying, well, the court ruled perhaps, I think you were sharing that the JLP, they perhaps should stand up. I said to you, the political season pretty much is up on us. They're going to put it to the court whether or not they're going to appeal it. So if it is that they should go to an election, they can say, okay, these are the points, so we have put in an appeal. But I believe this was an urgent appeal given the nature of this matter. So perhaps too, the administration, they were waiting on this, which could be like, it could have worked against them too, depending on the result of this matter. And if we look at, for example, even with the Prime Minister, in terms of his integrity commission, so that matter, we see where, he went to the court and the judicial review on some important points, he was successful in terms of moving forward with that in the court system. And so that for them is a win. So I can, like, I am not too sure because you can't just go to the I don't believe you can just go directly to the Privy Council. You have to seek, I guess, leave to go to the Privy Council, and I'm not too sure how that works. And so it could be a situation where that is not granted, and they wouldn't want to have that. I feel, given this time, this is a lot of people, they perhaps are not even for the DPP. I don't even know. A lot of people. And so I think the PNP can get over this moment. And if it is that there is something in there that they want to challenge, of course, do it for Jamaica, but don't do it for to be. And this happens on both sides. When we ask, don't be political, it's going to get political because both sides are going to play the politics. So it's the nature of the game, I'll say.
I totally understand. All right. So go ahead with your recap.
Okay, fantastic. So let me just check in the chat here. All right, not seeing any new comments. I am not missing any calls. So I am just going to give you guys a recap if you're just joining us, just so that you have an understanding. Perhaps I'm not going to play the recordings, um, just so that you have an understanding of, what this conversation is about. And so again, we're talking about the update in the matter of the DPP, Paula Llewellyn, and so the Andrew Holness administration, they won that appeal based on the information that is available today. All right, so before we got to this place where, the government is winning an appeal, back in April of this year, if you can recall, if you were following this matter, the Constitutional Court ruled that the second extension given to the DPP was null and void and of no legal effect. And so, what led to that was, I believe, back in 2020, the DPP reached the age of 60, I believe. All right, so let me just emphasize that part. And so, at that time, the retirement age for the DPP was 60. All right. And so the DPP requested an extension to remain in office, and I believe the extension was granted for 3 years. That's my belief there, because I'm trying to go back to memory. All right, guys. And so, in the context of that, when the DPP got to age 63, so I believe that's up to the point of the extension, the government, all right, the government amended, all right, the legislation regarding the retirement age for the DPP and the Auditor General from 60 to 65 years, all right? And at the time, the PNP, they shared pretty much that this amendment was unconstitutional. And you heard Senator Donna Motley there, she was pretty much sharing to, the abuse of the government. They were rushing this thing and they believe it was unconstitutional because any extension of the DPP, the opposition needed to be a part of that, pretty much. All right, so they were very strongly opposing the amendment, and as a result, they took the matter to court. So Peter Bunting and Philip Palwell, based on memory, they went on behalf of the opposition in the context of that matter, all right, in the Constitutional Court. So what happened is that back in April, as I shared earlier, the Constitutional Court ruled that the amendment in the context of the retirement age from 60 to 65, all right, was valid. But the problem was with the second extension that was given to the DPP. They claimed, the courts shared, that that was invalid. So that was null and void and of no legal effect. So I wasn't understanding, and just the little knowledge that I was trying to apply to this thing. If it is that you say that 60 to 65 is valid, right? And the extension, but I guess they were looking at it that the DPP had already gotten to age 60, right? Prior to this new amendment, right? And so the DPP would not benefit from this new amendment. I guess that's what they're saying. So they weren't really counting that extension. So now they're seeing what the government wanted to do as a second extension and not really aligned with the amendment. So they were saying, no, 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 that's null and void. So that was the Constitutional Court. So at the time, the government initially said the DPP would remain and they would seek clarification on the matter. However, the opposition, again, they were strong and they maintained that the DPP must leave the office. All right, so I think that was a Friday. All weekend, this thing was happening. And so on Sunday, I believe, all right, we got an update from the Attorney General's chamber. It was a Sunday back in April that the DPP was walking away from the office based on the ambiguity, uncertainty of the ruling of the Constitutional Court. And so it was shared. She was unable to carry out the duties of the office at that time. And pretty much what happened, the Public Service Commission was back into commission because I believe a lot of them, the terms, have been expired for a lot of the persons who were on it. And so they managed to get that back. However, they fixed that. Then a Monday in April, somewhere there, we were informed that Claudette Thompson was appointed as acting DPP. And I believe we have a video on that. So that pretty much, took us to where we are now in the context of this update from the the Court of Appeal, pretty much overturning the Constitutional Court's ruling. And it's not just overturning, it's a unanimous decision. So all the judges, they're in agreement in terms of, the DPP, that Second Amendment, it wasn't unconstitutional. And I'm just going to share some of the updates from that article. So let me just see if I can share some updates from that article as well. Again, I shared it was a unanimous, overturn of the Constitutional Court's ruling, all right, striking down the second extension of Llewellyn's tenure in office. All right, and the court, rejected arguments of the PNP, all right, and I'm just trying to, so they pretty much shared here that, Paula Llewellyn is entitled to benefit from the extension found to have been validly enacted by the Parliament. All right. And so, in providing a summary of the reasons for the court's judgment, all right, the court shared that the Constitutional Court was correct to reject the argument advanced by the People's National Party, PNP, that the amendment was enacted for an improper purpose. So the PNP lost that from, they went to the Constitutional Court to say, the amendment was for an improper purpose. They lost that from that point. So even though then the Constitutional Court ruled that the second extension was null and void and of no legal effect, the PNP had lost on that point. So now the Court of Appeal is saying, hey, we are agreeing that, this is not correct, all right? Or the court was correct to do that. All right, so they also agreed with the lower court decision in terms of section 2, subsection 1 of the amendment, that it did not circumvent the process laid down in the Constitution for the term of the office of Director of Public Prosecutions. So it would be interesting to see too what points they would want to move forward with if it is that they're going to do that, because they have lost some at the lower court. So now at the higher court is saying we're agreeing with these points, but however, there are some points that, this lower court, they have erred, on some points. So for example, a point was that, the test, for example, in terms of, I guess was problematic and a misunderstanding of law. And I'm not going to go back to those recordings. So that was in consideration to section 2, subsection 2, was inconsistent with the supremacy clause. All right, so was regarding that. The appeal court judges say the lower court should have determined whether Parliament conformed to the requirements of the Constitution and whether the Parliament had the power to pass the amendment in the manner that it did. All right. And the Justice Straw shared too that the lower court judges again fell into error in their interpretation of the effect of Section 2, subsection 2 of the amendment passed by the Holness administration. The appeal court rejected arguments from the PNP urging it to read down sections of the amendment from applying to Paula Llewellyn. They also rejected the lower court's conclusion that there is need for agreement between the Prime Minister and the opposition leader to extend the DPP's tenure in office. So what this Court of Appeal is saying, no, and I always wondered about that, because if Mark Golden is in government, he's going to want to do, unless it's already there in the Constitution. But what the Court of Appeal is saying, consultation does not mean agreement. So if I am saying, Paula Llewellyn is going to whatever, we're going to recommend that Paula Llewellyn, even if the opposition does not agree with it, the government can still move on, right? And I feel that is important too, because one, we don't want to have a system where if opposition is not agreeing with something, then the country suffers. So it could be Mr. Mark Golding in power and wants to move on, and the JLP is in opposition, and they decide that we are not going to agree, so let us just allow things to be. That can be dangerous. And so consultation here, that is something that is emphasized, I guess, based on what we now know from this update, does not mean agreement. All right, so just to let you know that. And that's pretty much, again, the Court of Appeal, they upheld the Holness administration appeal and rejected the PNP's counter appeal because they did that. So that was pretty much it. And then we had, just now I found out that the opposition, they shared too an update that they're going to wait, and they talked about the abusive power of the government and how they rushed this I guess amendment, and they did not get the opportunity to debate, and so they spoke about that in the context of Donna Scott Motley. And so we await further updates from the opposition to see how this one will go, and of course we'll be here to provide you with the update. And Minister, I guess I didn't share, of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Fort, shared that this ruling is a stark reminder that the appointment of civil servants should never be the subject of partisan politics. And the government, they're going to stick to that point for sure. And the opposition PNP, again, they had challenged the second extension granted to Paula Llewellyn. So the government is definitely welcoming this decision by the Court of Appeal. And of course, the PNP, they are not going to be liking this outcome at the moment for sure. And if we're thinking about, politics in terms of points, the PNP is going to see this as losing a political point, and the JLP, they're going to see this as gaining a political point. All right, so on that note, I just want to thank you so much for coming over, for tuning in, for listening. If you're a silent listener supporter, and I hope that you'll join us for future conversations. We want to hear from you. And this is really a platform where we keep it real and respectful. We respect our leaders of our country. They may not necessarily be doing what we expect of them all the time or what we want to see them do. But at the same time, it's Jamaica land we love. And I want us to understand that we can share views and we can express that we are not agreeing with you, we don't like what you're doing, without defaming and disrespecting people. And so we want to maintain that position too, so that when you come here you feel comfortable, you feel that you can share. If you want to share from a PNP perspective, you are definitely welcome to do that. If you want to share from a JLP perspective, you're definitely welcome to do that. If you want to share from a Jamaican perspective, you're definitely welcome to do that. So we want to keep this space, safe, open, where we can hear each other and we can learn from each other. I don't have the right answers always. And, everybody makes mistakes. Mistakes are learning opportunities. But what we don't want is to have a space where persons don't feel comfortable sharing, right? So we keep it real and respectful. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys being here. And something that we're going to do too is greetings across voices in education. So not long. So if you're interested in that, hit the subscription button, turn on your post notification, and you can come here to send greetings to your family members, friends, holiday greetings. We'll be here for that. But, blessings and love, everyone. And remember that with Christ in the vessel, you can definitely smile at the storm. Ovi, thank you so much for joining me. And to everyone there, wherever you're tuned in from, blessings and love. And thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. And I'm just going to play some music and then sign out of this one.